What's going on, everybody? Brett here, and I'm back today checking out a Total War Warhammer 2 free-for-all replay sent in by Boas The Conqueror. I think is how you say that. Could be something, some kind of play on like Boss. I don't know. Boas The Conqueror, a new subscriber, and I want to thank you, buddy, for sending in this replay and using Discord to do it. Very convenient for me. And this is going to be a fun battle. So before we get started and into the game, I want to say right off the bat, I watched this replay already. And I gotta say, the biggest and first thing I noticed is that I think all of the players here are somewhat new. The army compositions are not bad. Just I can tell based on unit positioning and perhaps the use or lack of use of hot groups tells me just right off the bat that certain players are perhaps less experienced than others. And then even then, when playing in a free-for-all format, the rules change, right? So there's all of these narrow corridors. This is a very cool map, one of my favorite maps in the game. I have several free-for-all playthroughs that I did myself on this map. So you see here, everyone's kind of doing like a standoff, right? Everyone's looking around and trying to see what the units are. We've got Blackguard of Nagaron, and you can see this right here tells me all I need to know about the newness of this player. His front line is Bleak Swords, Blackguard Corsairs. You've got the Blackguard of Nagaron here, the elite halberd units marching with Malekith. The unit composition is not bad, right? He's got Shades with great swords, he's got Dark Shards with shields, and then Malekith acts as both a lord and caster. But what I see here is that he's taken perhaps a few too many spells and abilities to ever really make good use of them. And then his formation, he probably wants to have these Blackguard on either end. He's going to decide that, you know what, I'm not going to go and engage the dwarves. I'm going to come over here and fight the Lizardmen. The Lizardman player is Boas, or Boas. I don't know how to say your name, but I want to say it right. But this is the Conqueror's army, and it's a good mix of elite units, Saurus warriors, Temple Guard. They were hiding in the forest at the start. Very good, just in case there was any artillery play to be had or any kind of vanguard shenanigans, they might be safe. He's got these two ancient salamanders, which are going to do a ridiculous amount of work for him this game. They're pretty much uncontested here by the Dark Elf player, and he's going to really struggle to kind of find a way to deal with them. Their range is 160. And he doesn't really have, you know, the similar range necessary to out-skirmish them. And with Kroq'gar out here in the front, Lord Kroq, we have a Revivification Crystal as well. They're going to be able to kind of provide that standoff so that the Shades can't get in here and shoot at the Salamanders. Now on the other side of the battlefield, the Dwarves have the Goblobber here is going to be tossing those goblins tied to rocks and slamming into the Storm Vermin. The Skaven player seems to be having some difficulty in deciding, you know, where to go. I think he's trying to get maybe into more of an open field to get outside of the range of the Goblobber. Now, the Goblobber was an interesting choice here and worth talking about for a second. Because it's a catapult, it's able to shoot over the tops of these buildings. But if it were a cannon, he'd be having no such luck. And you can see from here, the Ancient Salamander's shots were tearing into those Blackguard. And this is where I really knew, you know, this player is somewhat new to the game. He's running into this tight corridor where the Ancient Salamanders can just pick him apart. He seems to have certain units on hot groups and others perhaps not. And that's going to make it very difficult to, you know, especially on this map, to move your army through all of these narrow corridors and to engage. So all of his range units are coming up to here. Looks like he's sending his melee units perhaps down this corridor. But all the while, he's just going to be taking shots. And the Shades are now out of stock. They can be seen, and huge blasts are going to be going their way. And the Conqueror here is up on this high ground. He's got a nice position. Not really making full use of his infantry yet. I would probably block this corridor right now. Maybe not with a Star Chamber Guardian, something cheaper like the Saurus warriors. And then make another line here. And then just put whatever I wanted to behind it. You know, keep the Ancient Salamanders safe. Let him come down these corridors and, you know, clash against the Saurus and the Temple Guard here. These guys are pretty much unbreakable with their Guardian aura and providing that physical resistance to Kroq'gar. But yeah, they're just blobbing up so much. It's hard to watch because I think his army could honestly do a lot of work against the Lizardman army if he just kind of understood his positioning a bit better. So the meat of the Skaven army is definitely in their Hell Pit Abominations. He's got Lord Kroq for summoning. He's got several Storm Vermin, as well as the Council Guard, the elite. They have Guardian ability as well as being unbreakable. And Blightsclab's Plague Pack, quite the name. They're the Plague Monk Sensor Bearers. They have an aura that gives immune to psychology and an AoE, very strong. And he's just going to be forming up with his slaves. He's also got a group of Rattling Gunners. which are going to be very difficult, I think, for him to make use of this game. You've got to keep this kind of height advantage, which is fine right here. But once you get closer to the line, the dwarves are so short that you're really not going to be able to hit anything. And the dwarf player is now taking shots at the ancient salamander with the goblobber. That's kind of hilarious. But look how he's just kind of going in this line formation. There's so much AoE here. When you consider Lord Kroq's spells, his Deliverance of Itza, his 3-tiered spell that does huge AoE, he's just going to be able to drop it on these blobs and absolutely destroy them. And even when they make it into combat, they're going to be fighting elite Saurus infantry, and they're not going to have a good time doing it. And they're doing it with none of their range support. So this part of the battlefield, honestly, is a wash. Shield of the old ones, the Supreme Shield going off, giving that great ward save. And all the while that they're trying to engage the dwarves, this is a pretty nice dwarven formation. He's got the miners with blasting charges in the front, and then he's going to pull them to the back. Now the dwarf warriors, they're chevroned up, but they don't have any charge defense. So the hell pits are just going to get in here and start smashing them. He's got rangers, he's got quarrels with great weapons. They're a little too close to the front lines. That's a critique that I would make. I would pull them back to about here. No reason to saturate them with the front lines, because as soon as the hell pits break through, they're straight into the rangers. And already kind of shutting down what makes these units so strong, which is their range attacks. These rat ogres are going to be getting into here. Let's go ahead and see this charge. If they don't actually use their charging animations, then they're probably not actually targeting the dwarf warriors. Okay, we've got a little bit of the charge coming through. They might be just trying to bully through into these rangers and shut down more of the ranged aspects so that the front lines can engage much safer. We've got Grombrindal here, the white dwarf himself, and he's standing and fighting amongst the warriors of Dragonfire Pass. We've got a runesmith using the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, as well as all of the defensive runes. We've got Oath and Steel and Negation, which is going to be doing some good work in this kind of pivotal point here where the dwarves are taking the most damage. And they're being crumpled a little bit, but dwarves are pretty stalwart. They seem to have kind of flattened the charge out a bit. And in a moment here, the rat ogres are routing, flash bomb lowering their melee defense, and a big AoE. It's a pretty cool ability that Grombrindal has. And if we take a look back over here, oh lord, that's going to be a pretty nice chill win there for Malekith. But Malekith on foot versus Kroq'gar on top of Grimlock is a pretty huge mismatch, especially considering he's already surrounded by Saurus warriors. Malekith is tanky, but not that tanky. I don't know if anyone is that tanky. And the infantry has just been torn apart. Temple Guard do have shields, and they are decently armored. So shooting at them, you know, with this very minimum fire, thanks to how blobbed up they are, it's not going to be that effective, sadly. Doombolt coming down on Kroq'gar, going to get a little bit of damage. I think at a certain point he gets an okay Blade Wind as well, but before he breaks, he needs to use as many spells as he can. I think he used a Blade Wind perhaps in this location, if he's used it already, and that's what did most of the damage to these Temple Guard. But he's not long for this world. And he's got no other forms of leadership here that's going to help keep his army in the fight. Kroq'gar is just going to be able to rampage in the back line. I think the Conqueror here is not using so much of his Winds of Magic quite yet, and he's going to have quite a bit of magic to use. But I just feel bad for the Dark Elf player, because perhaps in different hands that army might have been a bit more effective. The Rattling Gunners here, they're firing their hearts out now, but they haven't been online pretty much the entire battle. They're only up to 4 kills. And for how expensive that unit is, that's pretty rough. Skrulk has just been here summoning units in the back line. These Plague Monks here are a summon unit. You can tell by the kind of blue aura. And they're a great unit to get into dwarves, especially just dwarf warriors and miners. They're going to do great versus them. And even better to get a rear charge here onto the miners and the warriors of Dragonfire Pass. But turtled up this tight with the Runesmith getting those defensive buffs, they're going to have a pretty good time cutting them down. So we've got a lot of ammunition still left on the Rangers and the Quarrelers. Grombrindal, you know, he got punched quite a bit. One of the Hell Pits, you check out the Abomination here. All of that damage, you don't have to have a lot of armor piercing to shoot at a Hell Pit Abomination. They only have 50 armor. So Dwarf Rangers and Quarrelers are probably one of the best units in the game for that. This Hell Pit was also driven off and should be returning any second now to kind of smash through the back lines. But yeah, if you can't shut down all of this overlapping fire, you're going to have a hard time fighting the dwarves. Council's Guard are, of course, unbreakable. They have great armor piercing as well, but they're mainly an anti-large unit. If they surround Grombrindal, as it seems like they're doing right now, they can do a lot of damage to him. But the White Dwarf has no fear. Even Lord Kroq'gar here, he can do pretty good in melee combat versus a Runesmith. I would expect him to win, even with the buffs being applied to the Runesmith. He has on-hit effects, he does magic damage, so he's bypassing some of the physical resistance. But that's just pure ward save, so that won't help that much. There we go. Storm Vermin being pulled back. There we go. The Hell Pit charges back in and is now crushing the Rangers. But not a lot of HP left on him. You see a huge, like, butt stomp. Amazing looking units. The Lizardmen were completely dominant here. I don't think there was any point in showing that fight much longer. Finally, I think the Rattling Guns are in a decent position to actually do some damage, but it may be too little too late. We've got Lord Kroq'gar was using his Liber Bubonicus to drain some of the health here, but the Dwarves have a natural resistance to magic. You'll see in the bottom left this tooltip here showing magic resistance 25%. All of their units have that. So Lord Kroq'gar, not the most effective Lord versus the Dwarves in terms of the magic AoE damage that he's trying to do. So Skaven player trying to get some value from these Rattling Guns, but the Lizardman player sensing an opportunity here is going to be moving in. The Ancient Salamanders used all of their ammunition just destroying Dark Elves, and they're going to get gadded down pretty hard. You can see they're moving slower, and that's thanks to the on-hit effect of the Rattling Guns. If we can kind of get in on that real quick. It's called Suppressed, so minus 36% speed. And they're going to make it in, and they're going to tear them apart. And there's not much left of the Skaven forces to stop them from doing that. The Dwarves, really right now, they're just routing off what's left. And then they're going to have to, you know, decide, do I form up here? Is the crew still alive for the Goblobber? I don't see them anywhere. They could blend into other things. But they could take advantage of some of their range. Right now, though, they have to deal with the big monster in the back line. And I think they're going to be able to do that just fine. Grombrindal hits super hard. Even though he's only down to 400 HP, he's nearly unbreakable, as most Dwarf Lords are. So they're pulling their forces back. No point in chasing the Skaven. I think I laughed the first time I watched this. Check out this guy. The one Council Guard left doing a jig as the Dwarves march past him to go and kill his brethren. How ridiculous is that? 25 HP. And the Hell Pit goes down, and the Skaven Slaves burst forth from its body. But they're going to instantly rout. They pretty much spawn surrounded. That happens most often. I find it pretty hard to get much value from the Slave Spears. And he's going to run away. Sensing his imminent death, the one remaining member of the Council Guard is going to run away. He's going to scurry flee. Very brave fellow, probably related to Queek, the only other rat that actually likes fighting. So here we go. The last two forces are coming to meet. The Ancient Salamanders are going to take out Lord Kroq'gar, who's got one summon left of Clan Rats. He's got Stand Your Ground popped, but on the charge, they're just going to hit him and break him. And down he goes. Is that another Rune of Wrath and Ruin? So one more Rune of Wrath and Ruin left in the tank. It's going to be pretty good on the Temple Guard, slowing them, causing damage over time. And what little ammunition there is left on the Rangers, I see only one unit that still had ammo, and I think they just shot the last volley they had. So they were taking a few shots at Kroq'gar. Over 4,000 HP still. Lord Kroq'gar's in perfect condition, the Bastiladon's in perfect condition, and we have some Saurus Warriors in a great spot as well. So the Dawi are coming in like a weird single file formation. I don't think that'll help them very much. They needed to engage the front line and then do their best to try and go around, perhaps, or just layer themselves. But this is awful, this blobbing. So the Supreme Shield of the Old One from Lord Kroq'gar, everyone's getting that huge damage resistance, and I think we're about to see some pretty nasty stuff. That looked like a Deliverance of Itzel to me. Yeah, here we go. Wow, so due to the charge up, I think that was at least a medium-sized one. And there's another one going off here. That may have been a smaller one, but it still did pretty devastating damage. Grombrindal has no fear. Being popped right now. You see all of the leadership of all the Dwarven units is now unbreakable. Unfortunately, you want to use that before your army routes, because it's not going to bring them back to the fight. it's only going to keep them fighting as long as they are, you know, unbreakable. So it's kind of a waste, a mistimed use. You want to use it that moment when you realize, oh crap, in the next 5 seconds, half my army is going to break. That's when you pop it, and your whole army becomes unbreakable, and you keep fighting. And they really could have used a well-timed Grombrindal Has No Fear, because we're talking like 8 or 9 units here that would still be fighting if he had kind of timed that a little bit better. Lord Kroq himself now getting into the action with his buddy Bastiladon, and they're going to be bowling over the Runesmith. Grombrindal not long for this world. Kroq'gar gave him the business. 300 HP left. One more good attack from Kroq'gar is probably enough to kill him. Yeah, that's a big 0. And down he goes. The dwarves will try and rally, but I think that'll pretty much be it. We can just take a second to look at the really cool melee animations of the ancient salamanders. Man, all the like roaring in the background, the audio makes it sound like there's like a thunderstorm going off outside my house, which I know is not the case because I live in South Texas and it hasn't rained for like a month. Man, gotta love salamanders. But the Runesmith tried to hold on with just a small group of dwarf warriors, and that's going to be it. We can ultimately just go ahead and let's fast forward it here. But I will say good sportsmanship from everyone. Everyone stayed in the game and fought as hard as they could. You know, there's no shame whatsoever in being a newer player. I would just suggest try and make a friend with a more experienced player. Or heck, even ask me, you know, in the comment section if you like. Join my Discord if you'd like. There's lots of experienced Total War players in there. And ask questions. Learn how to hot group. It's really not that difficult. It took me a while to learn as well, but once I figured it out, it totally elevated my game. I got so much better at maneuvering. And then just play the heck out of the campaign. I think that would be my second best bit of advice. The campaign is where I learned all the strengths and weaknesses of all the different races. I learned what all the abilities do, and I think that ultimately knowledge sometimes is just as important as micro in these types of games. So thank you a ton, Boas, for sending me this replay. It was a fun one to cast. I think you did a great job. You made good use of all your tools, right? You didn't have a ton of things to micro, which probably played to your strength, and you just had to stay very high and tight and use the strength of your elite forces, your good AoE, you know, spell casting, and just purely the raw power of Kroq'gar to do work. And, you know, the dwarf player I think had probably the best build out of everyone, and I'm not even going to talk. Yeah, guys, if someone ever shows you a badge that says this on it, just ignore them. They really probably don't work for the government, so don't even worry about it. But had he not had such a difficult fight with the Skaven, and the Skaven didn't do, you know, a ton of work against the dwarf, but what he ended up having to do was use all of his ammunition on the Hell Pit Abominations, which did get too horrible to die, I noticed at one point. So they ended up getting huge bursts of regen. It just took so many of the dwarves' resources to get them down that they ultimately weren't able to then turn that type of firepower onto the Lizardman player, and that kind of, I think, ultimately led to their defeat. And perhaps, even at the end there might have been a chance with a better timed Grombrindal Has No Fear. And then we also have Imperator Job, I think is how you pronounce that. I think, honestly, man, if you had split your forces in two, let's say you really were set on taking out the Lizardmen, perhaps split your melee forces in 2 groups, put the cheap stuff up front, put the Blackguard of Nagaron perhaps in another hot group hanging behind as kind of just like an elite backline defender to protect your ranged units in case Kroq'gar or someone else tries to run through it, and then move forward with your Dark Shards, letting them take the Ancient Salamander fire. Just get your Shades into a shooting position, and you could have melted these Ancient Salamanders. Shades are one of the most OP, armor-piercing, ranged units in the game if you can get them close enough to do their work. And even in melee, and let's say, you know, some Saurus warriors had gotten onto them, I'm pretty sure Shades with great swords probably beat down Saurus warriors. I'd have to test that, but it's a pretty close thing. And then Malekith, just don't overcommit too much whenever there's a lord like Kroq'gar on the field. You could have kept him in the back, perhaps in reserve, until the Lizardmen were more tired, you know, or maybe you had dropped a few Blade Winds and messed up their infantry. And then at that point, it probably would have been a good time to engage. So those are just my helpful tips. I hope, you know, a bad game doesn't put you off of Total Warhammer 2. And yeah, just keep learning, and I'm sure everyone will get better. And so guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Once again, my name is Brett. My channel is Goodtalk Gaming. If you would like to send me replays, just go into the description down below, look at my Discord, feel free to join it, and you can send me any replay you want through there. Just kind of send me a little message and say, hey man, this was a great game. Just make sure it's kind of a newer version of it, and I will happily take a look. So without any further ado, y'all, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Take care, y'all.